Whit. I'm the Sparta Community Branch Manager, and today we're going to do a super simple, basic embroidery project. So let me show you a few things that you're going to need for this project. All right, so the things we're going to need for this project are a 4-inch embroidery hoop. You can use a larger one, but I just like this size because we are going to be doing constellations, which is a pretty simple pattern, and so it kind of gets lost in a larger embroidery hoop in my opinion. So I like this small embroidery hoop so it fills up the whole space. You're also going to need a piece of fabric. It can be any fabric. It needs to have not any stretch. It needs to be a woven non-stretch fabric, but it can be any color. I'm choosing a dark navy, just, you know, it's the night sky. So we're gonna, that is what I thought would work best for this. But if you have a scrap, you could, instead of using light colored thread, you could use dark colored thread on a lighter piece of fabric. So that's just up to you. Since we're using a 4-inch embroidery hoop, we do want maybe about a 6 by 6 inch piece of fabric, just so we have enough overhang when we're working on our piece. You're also going to want a piece of felt. This is just, again, just a slightly bigger than the hoop, and that's going to be what we're going to use to back our hoop with. We also are going to be using embroidery thread. This is just cotton embroidery 6-string embroidery thread. And you can use other types of thread. This is my preference. This is really easy to find. I just got it in a gold-ish color and a silver-ish color. You can use metallic embroidery threads. I am not a huge fan, I'm gonna be honest with you. It does fray quite a bit. It tends to stick in your fabric. So it would make it nice and sparkly, but I prefer the plain matte colored embroidery thread. I think it makes it a really cute, folksy look to it. There's also different types of sparkly thread. This is just a non-twist thread. It's just a single strand. Well, there's multiple strands, but they're all, you can't unstrand them. And then there's also, you could also use some crazier colors because of this navy. I think this navy color, I think fluorescent colors really pop on the navy. So if you want to do something that's kind of not a standard look, you can try some different colors. You're gonna need the pattern. Again, it's for a 4-inch embroidery hoop, so you want something that will fit nicely inside that. I just got this off the internet. This is the constellation Cygnus. I'm specifically was looking for summer constellations in the Northern Hemisphere. And so this is one of the most recognizable constellations. It's the swan is what that is. You can see this would be the head of the swan, and here are the wings, and here's the tail. It's also part of the Northern Cross. You can see that as well. That's in this constellation. But it's nice because I chose this one. You can choose whatever you'd like. I chose this one because it is one of the constellations that look most like its name. It looks like a swan, so you can kind of see what they're going for there. And also, it's pretty simple, so you don't have to, it's not a whole bunch of stars, and it makes a nice shape without being too complex. But again, I just printed this off on my home printer to the size that would fit in the hoop, and I messed with the scaling of it a little bit just to make it to the size that I thought would look great. Some other things that you're going to want is a transfer pencil. This one is a water-soluble marking pencil specifically. I find that it mostly rubs off by the end of the project, so I don't really need to rinse it out, but it is nice if I got a marking in a wrong spot, I could wash it out and still use the fabric. I got it in white because it is dark fabric, so that's important. A dark marking pencil would not show up. We're also going to need some glue. I prefer, honestly, to use hot glue for this project, but this tacky glue, white glue will absolutely work for this. You just want to make sure that it has a good grip. You're going to need a pencil and some sort of cutting device. You're going to want a pair of scissors to cut any fabric or thread that you want, but also I have just like a little pin cutter too, and the pencil and the pin cutter are for poking holes in the pattern when we do that part. So you could use just a pencil or use just a scissors, but those are some things that are handy. one last thing that are super optional are some different types of fabric paints. This is glow in the dark, and this one is like a little white puffy paint. If you wanted, after you did your stitching, you wanted to add some stars for accents, that's what I did that on some of my pieces, and it looks really nice, and that's something you can use to do that. You could also use just plain acrylic paint and a tiny paintbrush or a dotter, and you could just dot it with a regular paint as well. All right, so let's get started. The first thing we want to do is to trace our pattern. So let me move some stuff out of the way. Boop, boop, boop. All right, so we're not going to do a real fancy tracing technique here. We're going to do something that's really simple. Because of the constellation pattern, it makes it super, super easy. So I'm going to take the end of the pencil and just poke it where the star is marked on there, and just poke a hole. We want to make it not giant, just like the end of the pencil. Oh, if it's going to cooperate with me, I may have to use the pin cutter there. Oh, there it goes. I think I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Sorry. This paper is being stubborn on me. So I'm going to poke right in the middle of the star and then twist a little bit to open up that hole. So again, with all the stars on here, I'm going to just make a little hole through the paper. And just on the stars, don't worry about the lines yet. We don't need to do anything for that. All right, and here's the last one. So I know that there's another star along this line, and it's right about here. So I'm gonna put another hole in this. This pattern particularly didn't have it, but I like to add it in just because I think it adds a little bit more structure. So these are not gonna be maps to the night sky that, you know, someone's navigating their way home with, so we don't need to be exactly. It's right about there on that line, and for my purposes, close enough is good enough, so. All right, so then we're gonna lay it down with our paper, with our fabric flat on a hard surface, and we're gonna take our marking pencil, and then we're just gonna put our pencil through the hole and twist it on there. We wanna get it, these don't make a super dark mark, it's probably hard to see, but so twisting it kind of breaks the lead a little bit and kind of grinds it into the fabric, and it'll show up there. So I'm gonna twist it onto all of these stars, and again, the size of the stars and the size of the hole don't really matter. We just need a little dot to guide where we're gonna do our stitching. And we'll get all of those. All right, try to get my extra star that I put in there. All right, and then I'm gonna hold it kind of firm to check. Yep, it looks like they all transferred pretty well. So now, I shake it, there's some little loose bits. All right, so now we have our basic, the stars laid out, and I'm gonna refer back to our pattern to see where the lines are. Again, it's a pretty straightforward pattern, so we don't need to be super detailed. And these we can just do very lightly. We're gonna stitch right over them, so we don't need them to be dark at all. We just need them to refer to them when we're stitching. So that's what that's gonna look like. Again, really light on the lines between the stars, and then try to get these dots pretty dark. And if you need to, you can go back and kind of put your pencil on them again and make them a little bit darker. And if your pencil gets crumbly, you can just pull it right off. All right, so that is our pattern. So let's load it onto the hoop now. We're gonna take the hoop apart by loosening this little nut right here and slipping the inner hoop out. Let's lay this guy. Ooh. It is important, if you want to be at least a little bit accurate, to remember the directionality of your constellation. So if it should be north, maybe up towards the top. But honestly, it doesn't super matter. I do know that the swan is kind of coming down in this general direction. Also, the sky is round, so what's up, what's down? We can, you know, make it look how you want it to look and how you find it to be attractive to you. So, all right, we're kind of gonna eyeball where the hoop is underneath there, and there we go. Now, I didn't iron or wash this fabric. We're not gonna wear it. It's gonna stay on the hoop. I'm not taking it off afterwards. But if you wanted to make this into a patch, or you wanted to take it off, you know, use it on some different, like on a pillow or something like that, you would wanna wash and iron out these wrinkles. But because I'm leaving it on the hoop, you can pull out any wrinkles that might be on there by pulling this fabric taut, and then all those little things that me, a lazy crafter, skips over, like ironing your fabric, don't really matter, haha. So now we're gonna crank this back down so it's nice and tight, and then it will hide all those wrinkles for you. You won't even have to think about them anymore. Wow, it's magic. So, all right, so that's what it's gonna look like on the hoop. So here we have, again, the swan kind of going in this direction, and let's get stitching. So we're gonna need, I'm starting with our gold thread. That is the six string thread here, and embroidery thread. I'm gonna take about somewhere between 18 inches and 2 feet. Don't need a whole lot, but I tend to be a little bit over generous with the thread, because it's a real bummer if you run out in the middle of it. Now, so just because of the size of the piece and kind of how I want it to appear, I want it to be a little delicate. So I am going to divide my thread. That's what's great about 6-string and embroidery thread, is you don't have to use this full thickness on everything and make everything really thick and just really bold. You can do things a lot more delicately by dividing your thread. So one thing I do is pull the thread gently between my fingers here, because it does kind of get some kinks and twists out, and it makes it a little bit easier to divide. And then you're gonna see here at the bottom, not the bottom, at the end of the thread, you can kind of divide it. I'm going to do, for this gold, I'm gonna just pull it in 3 and 3. And that will give us some nice little delicate stars. So pulling it apart, it is easy to get tangled, so I recommend just going really slowly and just pull from both sides, and it'll come apart for you. Just don't, if you try to go really fast, it will definitely tangle. So like I said, the metallic thread, if you're doing this process with a metallic thread, it does tangle so easily. So just be super patient with that. Oh, we're starting to get a little tangly, so come on. This whole thing is arguing with me. And if you are having a lot of trouble with tangling, definitely cut a shorter piece of thread. It's not, that is probably the biggest thing to help with tangling, is just using shorter pieces. But I'm impatient, so I like to big long piece and then deal with the tangles. So, all right, so we have 3 and 3. So honestly, this is enough for 2 of these projects, because you are only gonna use this length of thread for this one project. Get rid of that other guy. All right, again, I'm gonna run it through my fingers a little bit just to get out any super big tangles or anything. And then we're gonna load it on to the needle. Oh, I think I forgot to say that you needed needles for this project, which probably seems obvious, but yeah, these are just standard embroidery needles. There's not anything fancy about them. They are a little bit sharp, but they are sharps, which is a type of embroidery needle, but they're probably a medium size. Embroidery needles have a little bit larger of a head size, so that you can get all those strings through the thread, through the needle head. Okay, so to get these in, I don't have a magic trick for that. I like to cut the ends even, and then I do what my grandmother taught me, and I lick the ends. So that's not fancy, but hey, it works. All right, so I'm gonna just like squeeze it flat with my fingers and then get it real close and put it through. First try, no way. That never happens. Okay, so that's great. And then we want to tie a knot at the end, and this one I do have a trick for. So I'm gonna take the needle and I'm gonna take the end of the thread that's not in the needle and point them at each other, cross them. I'm gonna hold with this finger, I'm gonna hold it onto the needle. Say this as and then twist, 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 twist. Hold onto the twist with this hand and pull through. And watch this, it's magic. You don't get it too tangled on the end. And there you go, you have a knot right there. And you can trim that a little bit shorter if you like. You can also just like do an overhand knot. You don't have to do that fancy one. But and it doesn't need to be huge, a huge knot or anything. But there's that. So I'm gonna start at this top star here, and we're going to come up through the bottom. We're going to come up here and go to here. So a little bit above and a little bit below our dot. So again, a little bit above the dot and then about the same amount below the dot. All right, so when I say above and below, I'm orienting this as what we're gonna hang it on the wall with, or as up at least. So this is north to me, or up. And so this is above and this is below. So we're gonna do the same thing, except to the left and the right of the dot. Approximately the same amount. Now these don't have to be perfect, they don't have to be even, but you kind of want to make just kind of a cross or a plus sign here. So when stars sparkle, there's a word for that. It's called scintillation. And so if you're uneven, if some of your arms of your star are not the same length, it's just scintillating, that's all. That's why it's not gonna sparkle exactly even, right? So you can, so what I'm doing now is started going off on a little tangent there. So I'm gonna come up between the two arms, and we're just gonna do another plus sign, but at a diagonal between those two. So let me show you how that goes. We're gonna make it a little bit smaller as well, so a little bit closer into the center. And you'll see when we do finish our plus side, oops, sorry, I caught my scissors there. When we do our plus sign across the center at a little bit of an angle, we're gonna get a star. All right, there you go, that's our first stitch. Very scintillating. Then we're gonna have, again, this base one is this slightly larger plus sign and then a smaller plus sign at an angle over top of it. And that's our first star. So we're gonna repeat this on all the dots. I'll do a few more just so you can see. As far as sizes go, you can look at the actual constellation and try to mimic the different sizes of the stars. Usually you can find that pretty easily on a search, but honestly, again, sparkling stars, they're gonna sparkle at different sizes. And so we're not making a scientific document here, so you can definitely go with what you like, or sometimes I just go with whatever happens when it comes to some of these stitches, and I'm like, yep, that works. So whatever works. But this is gonna be the same real simple stitch for all of these stars, and we're just doing a little double cross or double plus here. You don't need to cut your thread and start again between them. You can use this whole length of thread to do all of the stars on this, and it should get all of them. Your back is not gonna be super pretty, but that doesn't matter. We're gonna cover it with a piece of felt at the end. So that's our second one. Let me show you what the back looks like. So again, not super pretty, but see, this is just one long stitch between these two different stars. And so you don't need to bother with cutting and knotting and all that jazz. So just let it run between the different stars. I'm gonna do one more and then I'll show you the second set of stitches we're gonna do. So when you get those all stitched on there, this is what that's gonna look like with all the stars stitched onto the pattern. So now we're gonna do the lines between the stars that give the constellation its structure. For that, I'm using a silver thread or a gray thread, and this one I'm also going to divide. We probably don't need quite as much, but I am, like I said, I do like to be generous so I don't wind up in the middle of this really small thing having to restart my thread. So for this one, for the gray or silver, we're gonna divide this into 2 threads. So again, pull it a little bit. So we will pull it apart here and get it into 2 and 4. Try to find ones that are like living next to each other in this twist. It makes them less likely to tangle as you're pulling them apart. Ah, nope, I got 3 and 3. Let's try that again. Oh, here's a couple. Aha, there we go. And again, going slow is really the trick to this as I tangle it up. Keeping it taut as well is helpful. These want to twist on you. That is their whole deal, is being twisted up with each other. So they do resist a little bit, but it's not too bad. So the one that's 4, we can just set that to the side, and we're gonna be using the one with 2 in it for our imaginary lines between the stars here. To give our swan its shape, we're gonna do the same thing and load up the thread onto a needle. This one should be even easier because there's only 2 threads in here, but I do like to cut off any fuzzy ends if at all possible. So if you're using more threads, so like the full 6 threads, sometimes I'll take a little bit of glue, like from a glue stick, and smooth it over the end, and that helps it get through the needle head. But there, first try. Dang, I'm really having a lot of luck today. Again, I'm gonna just do that real quick. Knot on the end. I believe there is a proper name for that knot, but I don't know it. So the knot my grandmother showed me is the proper name for that knot. So, all right, for this one, this is even simpler than the stars. We're just gonna go from a point here to a point here. You don't have to follow this exactly. We're not gonna do anything but one long stitch between the stars. So let's do that. Again, starting from the bottom, and then come up near the first star, and then go down near the other star. And you'll see it's still lightly lined on here, but we don't have to follow those exactly. Then the next stitch, we're gonna come up again near the second star and down near the third. So here you have to make a choice which direction to go. I'm gonna get the little tail end of the swan. I keep wanting to say goose. It is not a goose, it's a swan. So. Here, you're gonna come up from this bottom stitch, back up to the middle, and again, it's just gonna go across. The back does not need to be pretty whatsoever. So just cover that with that space with a long stitch. All right, so I'm gonna show you how I tie off the thread on the back. So we've got those all stitched. I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm just gonna do a real simple knot on the back. I'm going to go under one of the threads back here. I'm gonna just go under this gold thread, whatever's close to where our last thread came out. So I'm gonna go underneath with the needle, not through the fabric, just underneath the thread, and then make sure I catch the needle in the loop here. So that'll make a knot around that gold thread for us. Then pull it tight. And I'm gonna do that another time just to make it a double knot. So again, underneath that thread, that creates a loop on one side of the thread. And we're gonna take the needle through that loop and pull it tight. There we go. All right, and then I'm just gonna cut it close to the fabric, but not right at it, because again, we're gonna cover that all up. And that is all your stitching done. Let me show you how to attach the back real fast, and then we'll be done. Okay, so we are just gonna crop this fabric a little bit closer, leave about 1/2 inch around the fabric. It doesn't have to be pretty or exact, so I'm sorry, 1/2 inch around the hoop. So we're gonna cut that. It goes faster if you have larger scissors, just a special note, but I don't. All right, get rid of that stuff. So again, I like to use hot glue for this step, but regular white glue will absolutely work for this. You just have to, take your time. So we're gonna flip it over. We're gonna take our glue. And this is just tacky white craft glue. It's nothing special. It is in this bottle that goes upside down, but that's not important. That's why it looks a little bit different. So we're gonna just take it along the wooden edge of our hoop and just smear it a little bit at a time, maybe just like an inch and a half. Try not to get it all over the place. And then we're gonna fold it over and hold it down, just in that location. And then we're gonna do that. We don't need to hold it for a long time, but hold enough for it to grip fast there, and then we're gonna keep going around and around until we get all of it down. But you do have to hold it for a bit or it will pop right back up. So hold it. So with hot glue, you would do the same process, but be careful of your fingers, of course. And then, but it grips really fast. So that's what's nice about hot glue and this, using it for this process. But this absolutely works. It just takes a little bit longer. Oops. It does get your fingers sticky, so heads up. So here where the hoop divides, I just kind of, just be careful not to get it too overzealous in that area because you don't want it showing through over the top. If you can avoid it, oh, again, hold it down or it's gonna pop up. All right, so hold it down. I usually, when I use this type of glue, I do try to flip it over to kind of do a smush, and then I put something heavy on it, usually my cell phone. That's heavy enough, and let it dry for a little bit. I'm gonna cover my driver's license in there, so I'm gonna cover it up. So let it dry for a little bit, and then we're ready to put on the back. So let me give it just a few seconds, and we will get it on the back there. All right, so this is probably not as dry as I would like it to be, but it will be fine for our purposes. So there, that's what that's gonna look like with the glue. Not super pretty again, but it will absolutely work. So this is going to be a very similar process, but we're just going to put glue right where the hoop meets the fabric there. And again, try not to go crazy with this. You don't want it squishing everywhere. Unfortunately, this type of glue definitely shows up pretty well on darker fabric. So if you are using this navy, you do want to be not overly generous with it so you don't get it everywhere. If you are using hot glue, this does need to be kind of a faster process. But if you use hot glue, you can do a little bit of time and lay it down and then kind of inch around once it's on the, you can kind of do it in bits and pieces on the felt. So, all right, we have that on there. So here's your felt piece. You're gonna leave that flat on the table and then just flip this guy over top of it and kind of wiggle it around until it starts to grip that, and let it dry for a little bit. You want it to, you don't want to mess with it too much while it's drying, because felt does not like to stick to things sometimes, but it usually does to this, for this project, pretty well. So once you have it pretty dry, you're going to trim around the edge just closely as you can with a pair of scissors. I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a sec. So this is what your finished product is going to look like, something like this. This navy does like to show little dots of thread and stuff on it, so I also have like a little a lint roller. Sometimes I'll roll over top of it. But the back turns out like this. You can use any color, of course, but this is just kind of like a neutral color. You crop it really closely along the edge there, and it doesn't show in the front, but it does cover up the back nicely. This is also a good spot if you wanted to like stitch your name or the year or a message, or make a piece of fabric with a message. You could put it on here if you were gifting it to someone. So that is the basic project. I'll show you a couple different versions that how you can like zhuzh it up a little bit if you want to do that. But if you do a collection of these, if you do the whole summer sky constellation, they look really nice hung on a wall, or as patches, or on a pillow, or anything like that. A quilt, these will look amazing on. So they're very simple, but they do make a really nice impact. Let me show you some other ideas that you could use these for. So for this one, I just added some dots of some 3D puffy paint, though not super 3D, just to look like the night sky behind it. This is still Cygnus, the same pattern. It's a little bit smaller than the other one, so I could put that night sky behind it. Again, you could use regular, just acrylic paint, white. Now for these, I was like, let's go a little kooky, and I painted the hoop a fluorescent yellow. I used fluorescent colors, and then I added some glow-in-the-dark paint. So these actually will glow in the dark. This is the zodiac sign Cancer, and I'm a July baby, so this is my zodiac sign, but also I have a friend who I thought would enjoy this. And then if you're really just can't get enough, you can just really zazz it up to your heart's content and go really crazy with it if you like. So there's really just no limit to what you want to do. And so you can just add and add and add until you get to a point where you think it is what you want it to be. So you can go with really simple, really straightforward, or something a little more exciting if that's your cup of tea. Well, thank you for joining us.